Ready for me to get started? Okay, great. Hello everyone and welcome, and thanks for joining us today. And welcome to Introducing AWS Solutions for Backup and Archiving. My name is Brad Carlstead. I'm a Business Development Manager for Storage Solutions here at AWS. And I'm joined on stage by Michael Holtby, Technology Lead for News UK. Backup and archive are two of the most common use cases that customers ask us for guidance on. And there are a couple of reasons why I believe this is the case. First is that it's a common use case that everyone has. And second is that it often serves as an entry point to the cloud. Many organizations want to leverage the cloud for the cost savings, scalability, flexibility, and agility, but they don't know where to begin. And they often land on backup and archive because it's easy to start with low-risk secondary workloads. Now, while this is an introductory overview, there are a number of sessions in this track which take a deeper dive on specific backup and archive scenarios. And you can check your session catalog for a schedule of all of those. I'd encourage you to join any others that might be of interest to you. And we'll also have all these sessions posted to the AWS YouTube channel within the next few weeks, so you can catch up on any that you miss. Today, we'll walk through a common on-premise backup and archive environment we see from customers, and some of the challenges posed by this architecture. I'll show how to move backup and archive to the cloud, the benefits that can be achieved by doing so, and what differentiates AWS specifically for these workloads in the market. And then Michael will get up and he'll talk you through the journey of why and how News UK has moved their backup and archive process to AWS, what that experience has been like, and what the migration means for their business. We'll end with some elements that would need to be considered for any TCO analysis of AWS versus on-prem. To make sure we're starting from a common understanding, let's take a minute to define backup and archive. Backup is data retained to support near-time business continuity. It's point-in-time snapshots of a primary data set ready for immediate fast restores. It enables recovery from data loss, accidental deletion, data corruption, etc. An example of this would be my email server backup. I might have 5-minute incremental, daily, weekly, and monthly backups that are retained for 6 months. Archive, on the other hand, is data retained for long-term purposes, often for compliance or regulatory requirements. The data is accessed infrequently, and latency is more acceptable. An example here might be my email archive. For corporate governance purposes, I may have a 10-year retention policy for email, and I might need something accessed for a subpoena within a 48-hour turnaround. I'm happy and actually somewhat surprised to see such a large audience for this session today, as backup is really boring. It's just something you have to do. It's a necessary evil. But what can be exciting are the endless possibilities that present themselves once you have your backup data with AWS. And we'll touch briefly toward the end on the way that backup and archive can serve as a bridge to more significant cloud deployments. Now let's begin with an overview of a traditional backup model. Here I have my business-critical applications. Each has its own backup agent installed. Those agents are communicating back to my backup software suite, often referred to as master servers and media servers. A media server ingests the data and catalogs to index. The index contains a catalog of policies and schedules and information about destinations for my data. Once the data is indexed, it writes the files to one of several destinations. The oldest and still in use, tape, or a virtual tape library, which is a disk that emulates tape, then either a NAS or file server. The last destination might be a dedicated disk-based backup appliance with large CPU, memory, and cache. It ingests data quickly and often includes data deduplication, compression, and encryption. Now, each of these destinations has its own challenges. Most customers we talk to don't want a total replacement for this architecture, but they're just looking for lower-cost destinations to transfer their files to. This creates a complex environment you often have to replicate, which is expensive to maintain and upgrade, error-prone, and capital-intensive. From a financial perspective, tape libraries and tech refresh require ongoing cost and effort. You may experience slow recovery time as you wait for tapes to be returned from the vault, hope they're not defective, and that you still have the old hardware for mounting them. And quality here is low. Tapes break and tapes are lost. It's an error-prone process. As I mentioned at the beginning, other sessions in this track cover a number of backup scenarios in more depth than the general overview that we're going to be providing today. When considering AWS for these workloads, I'd also encourage you to think beyond just backup to what moving that data onto the AWS platform can do for you. The true value of moving backup and archive process to AWS isn't simply in the cost savings and other benefits that it offers directly, but in the business value that can be derived from that data. Now, as we move forward, let's see what a backup and archive architecture would look like in the cloud and how we would go about enabling that. Options for migrating to the cloud as a lower-cost destination for backup files really depends on your current environment and your backup software. Now, there are a number of solutions from AWS and our ecosystem of partners which can enable this architecture, and I've identified a few of those on this slide. If you have Commvault as your backup software, moving to this architecture is relatively simple, as Commvault is already natively integrated with S3 and Glacier. It offers a single common code base and a single index and supports dedupe and encryption. Now, for most other backup software, we need to introduce a storage gateway. Using a gateway with your existing software provides a frictionless transition for storing your backups in the cloud. The gateway presents itself as just another destination, with no other changes needed to schedules or operations. It's the most simple and least intrusive method of transitioning backups to AWS. No custom development is required, and familiar processes are maintained. Now, you can connect gateways to AWS with Direct Connect or just over the wire. The virtually unlimited capacity of S3 means that I won't continually have to be purchasing, maintaining, and upgrading my backup targets to support the growth of the business. When selecting a gateway, there are a number of factors to consider. Most important is what protocols do they support. The least impactful would be one that supports the same protocols as my backup software. Gateways allow for ingest of data in traditional backup format, and upon ingestion and logging, the data is then transmitted to the cloud through standard web protocols like PUT and GET. Features of gateways can include CIFS and NFS protocols, inline deduplication, encryption, and compression. And gateways can be offered as physical or virtual appliances. Now, one of the options to consider is the AWS Storage Gateway, which is a virtual iSCSI SAN device. You choose the region that fits your business and compliance needs and set it up with a few clicks. It supports a number of backup software solutions and enables the same OpEx model as all other AWS services. The Virtual Tape Library, or VTL, is a second configuration for the AWS Storage Gateway. Customers are able to present iSCSI targets representing virtual tape drives to their backup software, which then writes archival data to the virtual tapes. It looks like tape to backup software, but it's actually a disk array. Now, we also have a variety of partner solutions which support this architecture. One we see customers considering frequently for backing up their data center to the cloud is SteelStore. And SteelStore may be familiar as it's been in the news a lot recently, as it was just purchased by NetApp from Riverbed. Now, SteelStore is a local caching appliance that presents NAS protocols. It supports a lot of the backup and database software on the market, provides up to 30x deduplication, encryption, compression, WAN acceleration, key management, is integrated with both S3 and Glacier, and has an AWS AMI available. For remote and back office backup, a number of our customers leverage Cetera. Now, Cetera provides NAS appliances that you install in each of your locations, and they also support enterprise file sync and share. It has its own embedded backup software with its own catalog and agents, and like Riverbed, supports dedupe, encryption, and compression. Now, these are just a few of the many gateway options available through our partner ecosystem, and a number of these backup partners have booths in the exhibit hall where you can visit to learn more. Now, the financial benefits of this architecture can include a reduction in capital investments, a metered utility-style payment model, and the elimination of over-purchasing and provisioning while realizing reductions in AWS storage pricing over time. Operationally, it streamlines and simplifies data management operations, reduces the number of systems and data centers to be managed, and you can focus on innovating for your customers and your business instead of undifferentiated IT heavy lifting. From a business perspective, capacity is virtually limitless, so you're never constrained by insufficient resources. The pace of innovation is no longer hindered, and IT turns into an innovation enabler. As we saw on the previous slide, gateways are critical enabling technology to connect existing backup software to AWS. Most customers we work with are looking to take a phased approach to migrating existing applications to the cloud. Phase one would be taking some of our workloads through a gateway to AWS. This first phase normally includes workloads like backup and archive, test dev, and others that enable an easy, low-risk transition. I can archive my cold data to Glacier to enable cost savings through tiering. In the event of a disaster, the backup files can be pulled back from the cloud and ingested on site. Now that's all fine and good, and it provides me with an off-site backup to restore on-site, but it's only partially interesting. If my data center is impacted, I don't have anywhere to take this data to restore it. Things get more interesting if you can start to think beyond simple backup and what is possible once you have that data with AWS. And that's what we see here starting with phase two. If my backup software has an AMI on AWS, I can rehydrate that data and restore my entire stack in the cloud, enabling true business continuity. I can do end-to-end testing of my recovery process with no impact to my production environment. Now, this covers my immediate needs of backup and archive, and allows me to reduce RTO when compared with restoring on site, as I don't have to transfer the backup files back to my data center. Where things really start to get interesting is in phase three. I've got my data in the cloud, and I can now start doing different things with it. I can look at how end users consume that data. Rather than making changes to established systems, I can leverage that data for new and other tools. In essence, a bridge to the cloud. It provides me an evolutionary path. Once the data is in the cloud, I can do analytics or next-gen development for mobile and web-based applications, allowing me to address new and unique end-user requirements without the constraints of a traditional deployment. So we've taken a look at why the cloud, but why AWS specifically for these workloads? Well, there are a number of reasons why customers considering the cloud for backup and archive workloads select AWS. And the first is our global infrastructure. AWS provides customers complete control to determine where they store their data, which is critical for customers with stringent compliance or data sovereignty requirements. Another reason customers select AWS is the rich ecosystem of partners delivering storage solutions. I'd recommend taking a look at the storage competency page on our website for a list of partners by use case. And we also have solutions that can be launched directly on AWS through our marketplace. An example of the richness and continuing growth of our ecosystem is the recent NetApp ONTAP launch. Now here we see one of the premier traditional storage vendors on the market integrating with AWS to allow customers to leverage their on-site data for cloud workloads. Yet another reason customers may choose AWS is for compliance reasons. Robust controls allow customers to maintain security and data protection. AWS is designed and managed in alignment with regulations, standards, and best practices, including HIPAA, SOC 1, 2, and 3, PCI DSS Level 1, ISO 27001, and numerous others. We even have a specific region called GovCloud, which adheres to ITAR and FedRAMP requirements for those customers with the most stringent compliance needs. Yet another reason customers choose AWS is that we offer the only true cloud archive solution on the market. Amazon Glacier enables object lifecycle management through tiering and allows you to archive your cold data to a lower cost destination. You can seamlessly move data between S3 and Glacier using data lifecycle policies. And finally, the primary reason why many customers select AWS for their backup and archive needs is the breadth and strength of the entire AWS platform. We provide a portfolio of services that continues to grow with new services and features added every week, including a number of new services being added this week. The value we offer isn't simply in what we enable for backup and archive, but in all the other ways you can leverage that data once it's on the platform, from disaster recovery to data analysis to mobile development, and the list goes on. EC2 and Route 53 for restores, RDS or Dynamo for a new database platform, Redshift for data warehousing and analytics. And overall, Amazon Web Services gives you a reliable, durable backup storage without the upfront capital expenditures of on-premise storage. Our storage services remove the need for complex and time-consuming capacity planning, ongoing negotiations with multiple hardware and software vendors, specialized training, and maintenance of off-site facilities or transportation of storage media to third-party off-site locations. And now, I'd like to turn it over to Michael from News UK, who will talk to their experience in moving their backup and archive process to AWS. Michael?
Great. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll try and keep this as jovial as possible, that you can make a backup talk, but let's give it a go. Okay, so who am I? That went down just as exactly as I thought it was going to. So my name's Michael Holtby. I work for a company called News UK, which are a subsidiary of News Corp. That's a picture of me on my wedding day with a beer in my hand. That's why I've got a smile on my face. It's not because I was getting married that day. And I love cloud. Background, my background's in technology. Worked with technology for up to about 10 years. Computer science degree. Started off as an engineer in VMware, and then I've moved into cloud computing, which I absolutely love. It's certainly my passion. So, who are News UK? We're a news company, essentially. We print and distribute around 2.5 million newspapers every day in the UK. The Sun, which is I would say our main newspaper in terms of circulation numbers, that has a daily circulation of over 2 million. The Times around 400,000. We distribute that news not just in paper form, but we also distribute it in digital forms. We have websites, we have tablet and mobile apps on iOS, Android. And we've recently procured rights to show the English Premier League football. So a lot of guys stream that directly down to their apps. Unfortunately, it's not available in the US. If anyone likes soccer, speak to me afterwards and I'll try and get you some way in. And we have around 150,000 digital subscribers to the Times and hundreds of thousands to the Sun. They wouldn't give me those numbers, not quite sure why. So a little bit more around our strategy and why I'm here today. So we have a cloud-first strategy. We were actually mentioned in the keynote this morning. We had Jay just mentioned that News Corp are looking to migrate 75% of compute and storage into the public cloud in 3 years. That is exactly true. It's not easy. It's very difficult. I'm happy to have a beer and conversation with anyone that's also going through the same pain as me. I'm looking at migrating enterprise apps. So we're even looking at SAP and some big beasts like that. Just to put some numbers around what we're trying to achieve, we've got 16,000 servers globally, 3,000 of which are currently in public cloud, and we have 6 petabytes of storage. That will take our data, that move into the cloud, 75% in 3 years. We're looking to consolidate our data center footprint from 32 to 6 globally. And we have a very, very clear strategy of, if we can't get software as a service, which will always be our first choice, we want platforms as services, we want Amazon and other cloud providers to give us those wherever possible. We don't really want to manage infrastructure, though. We as well as getting our data centers, it's much better if we can consume services. But we will instantiate infrastructure in AWS, and they're fantastic at it. And we've got an embargo. Nothing gets deployed on-premise. No VMs, no physical kit. I've got a little bracket there other than for stability. So yeah, That's the only reason why. Can you read that just about? Cool. Our journey with AWS started around 4 years ago. So I joined around 3 years ago, and I was working in the system engineering team and the DevOpsy type team, where we look after the websites, tablet and mobile products. And moved on from there. That's kind of the bread and butter, and we've been doing that for a long time. We soon realised that was the best place for all of our digital content. More recently, we've started playing around with big data, looking at user journeys, understanding how we can target them and with advertisements and sell them stuff. And yeah, more recently, enterprise applications, as I mentioned already. AWS services, we use pretty much all of them. Like there's very little we don't use. EC2, Direct Connects, this is where I need to look at my notes. VPC, Route 53. I've got these pressing buttons. RDS, Dynamo, Redshift, CloudFormation. If anyone doesn't use CloudFormation to deploy their infrastructure into AWS, you're crazy. Go to some CloudFormation gigs around the sessions today, tomorrow, get clued up on CloudFormation. It's the only way to deploy your infrastructure into AWS, believe me. Version control, you can track changes through time, it's fantastic. Beanstalk, yeah, loads of others. I'm not going to read about all of our services that we use. So let's get on to data and archive. I'm going to start with some high-level architectural principles that we've come up with at News UK. So, and the reason I've done this, I think when you start looking at data and archive or any AWS solution or any solution really, you need to have some principles and strategy, otherwise you end up with siloed lots of different components and lots of different solutions for essentially the same thing. And you've got to be careful with that in AWS because they make it very easy for you to do that. So number one, rebuild, not restore. What I mean by that is don't back up your whole VM. You can, but have a story for automating the deployment of that EC2 instance, whether it be an AMI baker, whether it be one of the stock Amazon instances that you then layer deployments on with. Chef, use Vagrant, use Packer, whatever tool you want to use to create that AMI, do that. And use CloudFormation to deploy that immutable infrastructure wherever possible. Some enterprise apps you can't do that, but yeah, that's definitely the way forward. Yeah, just back up your data essentially. Use version control systems for everything. Use Amazon revision control or whatever you've called it, code commit. Potentially use GitHub, whatever else. Instances are temporary. So what I mean by that is make sure the instances are stateless wherever you can. Move the data elsewhere. Use S3 for storing some of that data if you can. Use SQS, use some of the services. Use RDS or Aurora or whatever these new services are. Snapshots are crash consistent. Be aware of that. They're not application aware. If you take a snapshot and at the time you take that snapshot, there is data that hasn't been written to the file system yet, that data is going to be lost. Some file systems, some of the modern ones, will be able to easily recover from that. Some databases will be able to recover from that most of the time. But when you're dealing with business critical applications, most of the time is probably not good enough. So we advise a typical way we back up services. We have an EBS volume dedicated to backup. We'll have that service back up to that EBS volume, and then we'll snapshot that volume on a regular basis and manage those snapshots. I'm not saying that's easy to manage those snapshots, and I'll come on to some things that I want AWS to do in the future. And I've got a wish list at the end, which I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with. Service-centric environment, that's more a process one. So I'd love to be able to give service owners the ability to restore individual files, to restore their own snapshots, restore their own services. We're moving to that kind of world where service owners take more responsibility in News UK. Before it was you guys manage the infrastructure, you guys do the monitoring, you guys do the backup. We're kind of changing that, and we're trying to bring, just make the service owners more aware of their service. So that was architectural principles. I'm going to just quickly run through why traditional backup is so bad. This is a bit of a repeat of Brad's slide. But yeah, what he said, slow recovery time, you've got to get the tape back from Iron Mountain or whatever vendor you choose. You've got a slow restore from the tape, and is it going to work? Low durability for I mean, however many of you have done a untar of it doesn't work very well. A lot of time that you'll have data loss, you'll have tapes that the guy that put them in the box dropped, and it's not good. Capacity planning is increasingly difficult, so you've got to really understand how much your service is going to grow over time. If you can't do that, then it's difficult to know exactly how many tapes to buy. Security backup agents, again, they're a pain. You've got to deploy them out. A lot of these backup providers, even in AWS, you need a backup agent. There are advantages to doing that. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying be careful with what backup vendor you choose, and do some testing with it. Security, again, encryption to tape is challenging, and getting data that in encrypted format off a tape is even more challenging, and being able to read it afterwards. Cost is the main thing here. So tape robots, I've got some numbers. Tape robot replacement, we've done some TCO modeling at News, and it would cost us, and we're at the point where we're going to need to do it very soon, $400,000 to replace our tape robots. We pay $50,000 per year on tape robot maintenance. And our backup licenses for our on-premise estate is $320,000 a year. That's $1,500 per terabyte. And these are huge numbers that you can just dramatically decrease in a cloud environment. So why we choose AWS for a lot of this stuff? Extremely high durability, Brad mentioned earlier, 11 nines of durability in AWS and Glacier. Infinitely scalable, you are never going to run out of space. You can try. I would really like someone to try and make S3 run out of space, or Glacier. You're never going to get there. Fantastic security. So what I mean by that, you can have fine-grained policies in S3, Glacier, using IAM to do all that with, which is just so advantageous. Auditable access, the security chiefs in your organisation are going to love that. You can use CloudTrail to see exactly what's going on, every API call that's being made. You've got encryption just out the box with S3 and at rest, and in flight with SSL or client-side encryption. Lifecycle management, something that you can easily just tick the box, turn it on after a certain amount of time, move the data from S3 to Glacier. We do that. We've got some case studies for that, which I'll come on to in a bit. Much faster recovery time, even though it can take a while to restore from Glacier. Up to 4 hours is what they say, and it does take a while. It's never taken 4 hours for me, but it can take a while. It's still just, I mean, you could ring a vendor and they might say it's going to be with you tomorrow, and you'd have to pay a ridiculous amount to get it with you within 6 hours or whatever else. It's just much faster. Very reasonable pricing, so you guys are probably aware of this, 3 cents per gig. I mean, just in S3, 1 cent in Glacier. It's just, our AWS bill is massive. We've got 54 AWS accounts. S3 and Glacier, you just don't even see it. It's EC2 and RDS that make up our bill. I mean, it's as simple as that, really. Typical reduction of CapEx spend. Again, that kind of follows on from what Brad was saying. One warning I've put here, it does cost to get data out of Glacier. Fairly minor, and so it's free for the first 5% of storage that you put into Glacier, and then there's minor costs afterwards. But data out also is costing, but again, it doesn't touch your bill really. So a few things that we've done at News, and we've spent quite a lot of time on this, is trying to work out what our data looks like across our estate and what Amazon services fit nicely into that data type. So my talk was actually called Data for Classification and Backup, but I thought if that bit was left in, no one would turn up because that just sounds so boring. So I'm glad the Amazon guys took that bit out. So first, long-term cold, really cold, freezing cold archive data. Data that is purely backup. So you're going to put it in Glacier, and you're very unlikely to need to restore it. If you are, then you can, but yeah, we're putting it there because we need it, maybe for compliance reasons, maybe because one of our previous titles has gone bad and we needed to put the data somewhere. Yeah, users will never restore these backups themselves. There will be typically a scripted restore of that data. And it's acceptable to the business that it's going to take a long time to get that data back. It's not something that they need now, although at News pretty much everything you need now. But yeah, we carefully classify that and then carefully use that for certain use cases. We've used the AWS Import-Export service, and I'm going to say that we didn't have the best success with it. Like, it took them, it took them forever to get the data ingested from our disks that we sent to them into S3. Not sure why, because we chose a supported storage device that we sent up to them. But yeah, it took months to restore 9 terabytes. I mean, it's a fair chunk, but I don't know why it took that long. We've got a direct connect. We use that now for moving data around. We're going to get to a point where we've got a lot of workflows or workloads in AWS, and we won't be able to use the direct connect in that way because, yeah, we'll be filling up our pipes. So we are going to need to revisit that and potentially look at that AWS import-export service again. Or there's other Cloud Beam and a few other services that are vendors that do that for you. Okay, so online archive data. This one, to me, is the most interesting because you have quite a few different choices and a few different solutions that you can use here. So this data is rarely accessed, but it needs to be available for users to be able to get at, or a backup system to be able to see in their backup system. We use, so a typical case study at News is a guy comes to me, comes to the team and says, I've got a USB drive under my desk. I want to make use of cloud storage. Okay, and I need it presented on both Macs and I need it both presented on Windows, which you haven't got right now, but you want that now because it's going in the cloud. Okay, we can do something for you. We're typically using Storage Gateway for that. What we've done, we've created and it's a downloadable OVF template. We've put that in our VMware estate. We've layered on top a Windows file server, and we're presenting those iSCSI disks to our Windows file server, and then we're presenting that out as CIFS, and actually NFS works fairly well on Windows 2012. And we're able to present that to both Macs and Windows environments. We've got Storage Gateway here as a backup tool. I think when it was originally created, it was potentially a storage tool. They wanted to start looking at gateways and do things there, but I'll come on to why we've classed it here as backup in a bit. And we also use the Oracle Secure Backup module that you can plumb into RMAN, and we push Oracle backup. So if you've got a big Oracle estate and you want to reduce your tape backups, you want to reduce your net backup licenses or whatever backup vendor you have, you can use the RMAN direct to S3 connector. It does cost a fair amount of money, But that's the strategy. We're moving to the cloud, and we're using cloud services and vendors that will offer that. And Oracle have done a good job. It works really, really well. Actually, I'm going to go back to that slide. So I want to talk about Storage Gateway just a little bit more. So we have that in Gateway cached form. There's other forms that Brad mentioned. Gateway stored, where you have a large amount of data, or disk data from your on-premise environment on your Storage Gateway, and then sort of scheduled trickles back to S3 or schedules back up to S3. We have an amount of cache that is on our VM OVF template that is presented to users, and the frequently accessed data is presented really fast, so that stays in the cache, and we've got a fair amount of cache. So, and then the rest of the stuff goes back to S3. We don't use VTL. I find VTL is moving your on-prem type backup environment into AWS. So even if you use NetBackup's AMI or some others with VTL that they do support, I think that's just moving the problem a little bit rather than solving it. So this one's an interesting one, semi-static shares. So as with moving a lot of our services into AWS, we needed a good NAS-based solution in AWS. We did various POCs, and we're continuing to do POCs on these vendors. I'm going to mention Maginatics recently being bought out by EMC. We really loved Maginatics. It was definitely the one that was leading the way for us. We're kind of in a bit of a flux state. We're not quite sure what's going on with that product, but we're still looking at others. I'm actually going around. I've spent a couple of hours going around reInvent, talking to all those vendors to understand what their roadmap is, what their cloud-based NAS solution looks like, and whether we could use it in production. So some examples here, document shares, image repositories, And the other two classification types I've picked out are high-frequency performance data. Again, if the premium file sharing solution was performant enough, we could potentially use it for that. We're looking at local EBS for that high-performance data, maybe SSD as well. And then online collaboration, I've just put that in there. It's another classification type that we came out with. We're quite a big Google house at News UK, and we use Google Docs for online collaboration. I've put Zacolo, I'm not sure that's how you say it, but I've put that in there because that looks really good as well. Never tried it myself, but yeah, looks fairly impressive. Okay, next steps. We are looking at backup as a service offerings at reInvent. So as much as it may sound that we might know what we're doing-ish in terms of backup, we still see the management of snapshots, the management overhead of backup in cloud in general just quite tough. And I went to the Convolt session earlier. I thought it looked really, really good. I loved the integration points with Glacier. I love the fact it kept track of data that went from S3 to Glacier, and it knew that, and it could pull that data out of Glacier, and it remembered it. It's the only backup product that I've seen that actually does that. Very keen to work with them and run a POC of their product in our environment. So AWS Wishlist. I don't want this to be an AWS bashing list, but it kind of is. So, number one, high availability for the AWS Storage Gateway. We can't use it for anything other than backup and archive at the moment. I want Amazon to give me NAS as a service. I don't want to manage any infrastructure. I want to create SMB, NFS shares directly out of S3 maybe that perform okay, and I can use those for my AWS resources. That would be the ideal end goal. And I'm talking with the product owners for Storage Gateway, and I'm trying really hard to make that happen. A lot of people I think have asked for that. Storage Gateway in your on-premise environment at the moment, there's a single VM on a single ESX host on a single chassis. There's no way to replicate those or create HA hot or even hot-cold redundancy between those Storage Gateway VMs. Another one which is a real bugbear of mine, when AWS release services that you can't tag, it's a pain because we do tag-based cost allocation, and you can have up to 20 volumes, 32 terabyte volumes on a Storage Gateway, and we can't tag them, so it's impossible to recharge the business for those volumes. Not that they particularly generate much cost, but it's a pain. User accessible previous versions of files. So that one is more targeted at what some of the really good cloud-based NAS vendors offer. So they allow you to use their console to restore, or some of them used to, restore previous versions of files, restore snapshots and such. And that was a really nice feature that we loved. The next one's exactly the same, actually. So I got that from Maginatic. So a Storage Gateway agent, maybe, that you can deploy to instances within AWS or even on premise, that benefited from an element of local cache to make that just run much faster and be able to access those files much quicker. We saw that increased performance quite a bit. Deduplication of data, again, I can see that being challenging for a Storage Gateway in its current form. I'd like that in the future. It'd be great to actually write only the blocks that have changed and make use of S3 doesn't cost a lot, but you could still consolidate in terms of how much S3 storage you're using. SMB, NFS shares directly from S3, I mentioned that one. 2 minutes, wow. Okay, Archive. Ability to move EBS snapshots which are in S3 to Glacier and have retention of those and have policy-based retention of those. Grandfather son type usage there and be able to, and tooling, have something that looks after those. It would be great if AWS provided that. And then I've put backup as a service, which I'm still investigating. We'd like Commvault, as I said, and we would like someone to point me in the direction of someone doing backup as a service at the moment, and I will happily talk to them. But I think that's it. Cool.
Great.
I'll hand over back to Brad.
Thanks, Michael.
For TCO.
We have just over 2 minutes left, so I will get through this somewhat quickly. And the one thing that we want to touch on, and the important note here, I won't ramble on about TCO, is that often when we see customers doing TCO comparisons, they consider things like hardware and software costs, but they don't consider the full cost of running a backup and archive workload on premise. They don't consider things like facility costs, space, power and cooling, off-site tape vaulting and transportation costs, maintenance and upgrades, labor with sysadmins and data center techs, professional services, and the cost of capital. And they also don't frequently consider storage utilization as they're comparing the raw cost of storage with fully utilized cloud storage. And so in summary, AWS offers a complete platform for backup and archive workloads. You choose from our 11 regions for the one that fits your business and compliance needs. Increase scalability with virtually unlimited capacity, increased durability. Choose from a set of service which landed AWS in the leadership position on the recent Gartner Magic Quadrant for public cloud storage services for both our ability to execute and our vision. And also, leverage our large ecosystem of storage industry partners who offer a broad range of backup and archive tools that are all AWS integrated and all at a lower TCO. So I'd like to thank Michael for joining me here on stage today. And more than that, I'd like to thank everyone here in the audience for joining us. Please don't forget to give feedback on your session. And if you're interested in learning more, visit the AWS and partner booths in the exhibit hall. Thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the conference.